Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh of InnerSkill.com. And today I have Dr. David Bilstrom with me. David, how's it going today?
Oh, very well. Thank you.
Cool. So, who is Dr. David Bilstrom and what does he do? What kind of work does he do?
Well, in a former life, I was a Division One scholarship tennis athlete at TCU in the U.S. So I give a little shout out to TCU. But I'm also an author, an educator, international speaker, and a physician who is changing the way that autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide.
Well, very cool. I'm sure most people listening to this know what autoimmune disease is, but I'd like to just kind of hear your definition of what this means.
Yeah, when I started specializing in reversing and preventing all autoimmune disease, there was an epidemic of all the well-known autoimmune diseases, things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's, and ulcerative colitis, all these different kind of diseases. But in the many years I've been doing this, it actually turns out that immune system disruption is actually part of basically every chronic disease. So many things that we didn't realize had an immune system component actually do, like 70% of all autism is one particular autoimmune disease. There's autoimmune components to heart attacks and strokes and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia and osteoporosis. And just about everything else you can imagine, the immune system is there because the immune system, the innate immune system, more specifically, one of the two parts of the immune system, oversees our ability to prevent excessive inflammation production. And any body part that has excessive inflammation, you're going to have a disease there. And so this is how it ties into all chronic disease, not just the more classic autoimmune diseases that a lot of people are familiar with.
So basically, you're saying that inflammation in certain areas and certain circumstances will cause a certain autoimmune disease, right? In
All disease, all
all
disease.
disease. Okay. So
Yep.
now I've heard some people talk about, though, that, inflammation is a natural way for the body to heal itself. So could you talk about kind of the good inflammation and then when it kind of runs rampant or runs awry or something malfunctions or however we want to frame it?
Yeah, so you're right. Inflammation in a body part, a little bit of inflammation, it is a signal to the body to get in there, heal what the damage, and then whatever body tissue had gotten inflamed in the first place is back to being beautiful and healthy and all this kind of stuff. But it's the excessive inflammation that is problematic. So let's say like somebody sprains an ankle. Well, you have a lot of inflammation. It's red, it's hot, it's swollen, it's throbbing with pain. You can barely touch it. But you want to throw some ice on it to start lessening some of that excessive inflammation because it's going to start damaging healthy tissue. With all these pro-inflammatory things being produced, it's going to start damaging good tissue on top of the tissue that actually got damaged with the sprain itself. And then as time goes on, your body addresses all that inflammation that's produced, gets rid of that excessive inflammation. Now you can start healing the damaged tissue, and now you get back to healthy tissue. But the same thing applies anywhere else in the body. If there's things that are creating excessive inflammation, like in the blood vessels, well, here's heart attack and stroke. In the brain, any brain thing you can imagine, joint stuff, muscle stuff, gut stuff, eye stuff. You just get this excessive inflammation that a disrupted immune system can't deal with. And then with that excessive inflammation, you start getting damage to the tissue and chronic disease.
So what do you attribute these malfunction or this excessive inflammation to? Like how do you feel and think and have studied and experienced is the root cause of this inflammation going wrong?
Yeah, so this is a natural process, but unfortunately, the world we live in makes it profoundly difficult to stay healthy. The world we live in tends to be very, very pro-inflammatory, tends to create a lot of inflammation in the body. And so, for example, we see these things called civilization diseases, all these things that are so much more common than they used to be. Things like type 1 and type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, obesity, being overweight, cancer is just going crazy, such as like colon cancer used to be the 43rd most common cancer. Now it's the second, and people under age 40 are getting it a ton, when it used to just be people in their 60s and older. high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, all the traditional autoimmune diseases, but then things like cataracts and macular degeneration and retinal issues, heart attacks and strokes, and this amazing epidemic of neurodegenerative disease. Like in kids, if it's not autism, it's developmental delay. If it's not that, it's ADD or ADHD. If it's not that, it's anxiety, depression, suicide stuff, migraines and seizures. In the adult population, that same stuff. But then you get this amazing epidemic of neurodegenerative disease like the Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia and ALS and all this kind of stuff. It is just crazy hard to stay healthy. And even people that are really, trying lifestyle wise to stay as healthy as they can, they still develop this stuff. And there's very specific things that we can do, though, to put people in a much better place never to get this stuff. The science is very clear about what we can do to prevent things, but also the science is very clear what we can do to reverse the process, even once it's been well established, and then get the body in a position not only where it's a whole lot better than when we started, but then we kind of lock people in place so that they just don't get this stuff as time goes on. They don't keep getting one thing after another anymore, including trying to put people in a position where they don't get the stuff that maybe their parents and grandparents and other people have gotten historically.
It cut out again when you were talking about the root cause. Did you mention genetics? I know in some of the material I was reading before, you talked about epigenetics, but is it just a lifestyle? And then you do the lifestyle. So is it a combination of all these, or I'm sorry, it did cut out there for me briefly. The root cause of some of these.
Yeah, and so epigenetics is a big driver of health or ill health. And so we used to think our DNA, the genes in our cells that tell the cells what to do, was hardwired. Whatever we got good, bad, otherwise, from parents and grandparents. Your parents and grandparents may get these diseases that you go, geez, I don't want that. I hope I got their good genes, not their bad genes. But actually, it turns out it's not what genes you have, it's actually which ones get turned on and turned off. So this is epigenetics, the things that influence gene expression without changing the genetic code. And it turns out in every cell in our body, in our DNA, we have a lot of bad genes that will try to tell our cells, our body parts, the wrong information. Of course, we have a lot of good genes that try to tell our cells, our body parts, the right information. So what tends to happen when people start developing health issues is we start turning on the bad genes and turning off the good genes. And this is happening in every cell in our body. And this is why once you kind of get one thing going, one body part might not be the happiest camper in the world. Well, now you got a second thing, and a third thing, and a fourth thing, and a fifth thing. And it just seems to be one thing after another. And oftentimes, if people are trying to use medicines that just kind of put a bandage on a particular symptom, oh, I got this blood pressure thing, or this cholesterol thing, or this pain thing. Well, here's a medicine to help me get through my day, but it's not really fixing the underlying root cause. And then that root cause, that epigenetic stuff, just keeps rolling along, and now you're on a second med, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and still getting new stuff after that. And so the things that go on our body that work through epigenetics, turning off the bad, turning on the good, are profoundly powerful, or things that we can do to facilitate our body turning off the bad, turning on the good, is some of the most powerful things we can do.
Yes, this is it's really empowering, I feel. And epigenetics, as we know, is a new field. I mean, it's compared to a lot of the other things that have been studied in medicine for a long time. And just off the top of my head, and correct me if I'm wrong or go into better explanation here, there's our environment is a huge one, right? But a lot of our thoughts and feelings, right? The our self talk, um, kind of I guess habits, the habitual tendencies we do. The amount of stress, though, I feel is a huge one. The more stress we're under, the more, like you say, the bad genes can be turned on, and instead the good ones. So Yeah, we can get into this for a little bit, and then I guess talk a little bit about how you treat a lot of people. Is it really specific towards the type of diagnosis on what you'll recommend people? Do you look at? I'm sure you're more holistic, where you look at the person's lifestyle and how they approach life, their viewpoint. Yeah, you can just talk about diagnosing and treatment too with what you do.
Yeah, you're right. So everything tends to impact our genes. And when you talk about stress having a negative impact on this epigenetics, to the body, really stress is stress. Doesn't matter if it's physical stress, emotional stress, spiritual stress, it's just all stress. And we tend to live in a world that creates a lot of emotional, physical stress to the system. Um, and lifestyles can do that as well. But when you kind of think about what can do this to the epigenetics as far as like positive, the body is so smart, it is so good at healing, its natural default mode is always to move towards wellness, that it's not as complicated to get these genes flipped the right way as we might think. Including about 16 years ago, Harvard did a great study where there had been two different studies that suggested that meditation would work through epigenetics. The second one was done in India. So Harvard decided to get their very best researcher on this and see if this is really true. And so what they did is they took this huge population of people that had daily between 3 and 27 years been doing things like meditation, yoga, tai chi, repetitive prayer, progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing exercises, all these different modalities. And then they took this other group that had never done any of this stuff and they checked their epigenetics. And it turned out there was about 2,000 genes that were flipped differently between the two groups. And they go, well, this is fascinating. So then what they did is they took the never meditators and taught them how to meditate. And they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to meditate 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks, just 8 weeks, and see if anything changes. Well, sure enough, when they rechecked their epigenetics 8 weeks later, um, of the 2,000 genes that were expressed differently between the two populations, the non-meditators, I'm sorry, the new meditators had flipped 400 of their genes to match the long-term meditators. And Harvard goes, well, that's fantastic. What do those genes do? Well, it turns out those are the genes that code for inflammation control. And they go, oh my gosh, this is spectacular. This is why meditation or other things we're talking about and other things that work through epigenetics, this is like what you want to do for everything. Wow, this is spectacular. And the take home message was that it worked through epigenetics. Now, folks like myself may not have been surprised because studies had already shown that acupuncture works through epigenetics and that other things work through epigenetics. But I think one of the biggest take home messages that was kind of missed was it only took 8 weeks. It's not like you got to do this stuff for like 8 years to finally see a benefit. In 8 weeks, you start flipping things. And human nature being what it is, we always say, well, you don't need to be perfect to stay healthy or to regain your health. You just got to be perfect enough. And so here are these group of people, the new meditators. Harvard says, hey, we want you to do 30 minutes, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. We don't care what you do the rest of your life. We just need you to do this for 8 weeks. Well, on average, the people did 15 minutes a day, only 3 days a week for the 8 weeks. And so even Harvard can't get people to do this stuff perfectly, even for 8 weeks. But the great take home message is you don't need to be perfect. Just do it. Even a couple minutes a day, your body is going to say, fantastic. You are putting me in a position to fix this stuff. And all I've been doing is waiting for my opportunity. I'm just waiting to heal this. And now you gave me the opportunity. Now I can start fixing things. And this is where a lot of things that we do to turn this stuff around for folks, whether it's the traditional autoimmune disease or just chronic health issues in general, or trying to keep somebody healthy, it's not as hard as the more traditional medical establishment makes it seem. The body's just too smart, so smart. It's not as hard as it seems.
It really is, and I can attest to this from personal experience. I mean, of course, I'm just one in a huge number set when it comes to the scientific method and how that works. However, I hit rock bottom in my life, and it was at a point where I sat down, kind of at my wits' end, and I sat there for an hour. And I won't go into details now, but it was such a profound difference that happened just the very first time, and such a huge relief. And I haven't really met any people that has been so immediate and extreme for me that I just said, what do I have to lose? I'm going to commit to this for the foreseeable future. And yeah, so I won't go into the whole process, but it completely turned my life around. I mean, it absolutely amazing and incredible. I can't even imagine where I'd be today without it. And I even say that for more serious meditators, the health benefits are kind of like the side effects, you know. So it even has it has way more potential than even this, and that's good enough. What you're talking about is just good enough, you know. So there's really, I mean, yes, some people that jump right into the deep end. There are warnings for some people that go very, very intensely at the very beginning, right? But that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about just this simple, straightforward. I would assume with the meditation you're talking about is just mindfulness meditation, right? Which is really popular now. And yes, it does have these profound effects. For one thing, physically speaking, I did have
And
bits of
now we
psoriasis.
tend to see the folks.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it must have cut out a little bit. My psoriasis went away, and kind of allergies I've had since a kid or teenagers. Maybe it wasn't allergies, but when I woke up in the morning, the breathing, and snotting and sneezing, that just kind of clears out when I sit in the morning. You know, it nips that right in the bud most days. So it was a dramatic effect and turned around on that. So. Yes. So just briefly mentioned to folks what kind of meditation you're talking about that Harvard used for this study, and then
Well,
what do you
really,
recommend people do? I mean, do you talk to? I mean, do you teach meditation, or where do you refer people to learn about this at?
yeah. So there's a few lifestyle things that we like to use along with everything else we do. Now, the folks that we tend to see are the ones that have done the meditation. They're trying to do the exercise. They're trying to change how they eat, and it doesn't seem to be helping. They're like, geez, why even put the effort in? I've been doing this for a while. It doesn't seem like it's helpful. But what we always see when we do lab work, let's say like blood tests or stool tests and things like this, we're going to see things in the results that are never good, great. And I get to tell people, yeah, you've been doing this stuff, this lifestyle stuff. You're not feeling any better, but I can see on your labs inside of you all the positive benefit. This would never look good on this lab test result unless you have been doing what you've been doing. You set this excellent foundation. Now we just got to figure out what you missed, kind of a thing. And so we always ask people to do 2 or more minutes of some kind of deep breathing. We love the free app for your phone, the Insight Timer. Um, the Any kind of relaxation would be great. We teach people how to use nature, get outside, and all this, including a lot of data has been coming out about what they call circadian biology, photobiomodulation, the impact of light on human beings. And this is one of the things that's making particularly challenging to stay healthy nowadays is early morning light, particularly within the first 3 hours after sunrise, is very high in infrared and far infrared light, and that is super beneficial. And so the studies say if you can get 2 or more minutes of early morning light within the first 3 hours after sunrise, no sunglasses, no sunscreen on your abdomen. We want the light to hit the abdomen. The back of the eye is the retina, and most of the retinal cells are what they call image forming retinal cells. So light photons of energy hit these image forming retinal cells, and they project information up to the part of the brain called the visual cortex, and we can see images. We can see things, right? Well, there's also retinal cells that are non image forming retinal cells. And these guys, light hits them, particularly the infrared, far infrared, and they project to all these other brain parts involved in our metabolism. Why we gain weight, but this is why we can ungain the weight. Parts of the brain involved in emotions, like the amygdala, parts involved in mood, the circadian rhythm center of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it turns out that every body part we have has its own unique circadian rhythm, this 24-hour cycle, including the intestinal microbiome, the mix of the good, bad bugs in the gut. that is a vitally important central mechanism, actually helps the intestinal microbiome normalize, but also inflammation is projected to the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is part of this HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland axis, that is how does the body deal with stress? And this is connected with every organ system in the entire body, the cardiovascular system, the endocrine hormone system, the immune system, you name it. A very healthy HPA axis, the whole world might be crumbling down around you, but this stress doesn't get in and mess you up and cause you to be sick. A disrupted HPA axis, any little bit of stress in your life, emotional, physical, spiritual, it just takes you down, kind of a thing. And so, this is where you hear people say, geez, even the weather change will make me feel different, poorly. Well, man, you don't have the capacity to deal with much stress, including a weather change. Or when my relatives visit for the holidays, I need to take steroid shots because I got so much inflammation, everything's flaring and all this kind of stuff. So it has a really profound impact, including when the light hits the abdomen, it optimizes the intestinal microbiome directly. You build all the good bacteria in the gut, you get rid of the bad. The good bacteria that tend to multiply the most are the ones that make a really important something for the entire system called butyrate. Butyrate is made by the good bacteria. We can decimate that population with stress and antibiotics and a lot of other meds and all this kind of stuff. But it builds up the butyrate producing good bacteria. And not only does butyrate prevent cancer 5 different ways, for example, butyrate works almost exclusively through epigenetics. It's changing gene expression in every cell in our body. You're actually making more of that with the help of the early morning sunshine. Now, in order to fix the whole system, we might use butyrate as a supplement for a while as part of our healing the gut, and then ultimately get the gut to make the butyrate itself. But this is such a central mechanism, these non-image forming retinal cells, for example, that when a woman's pregnant with a baby, early in the second trimester, about a third of the way through the pregnancy, early in the pregnancy, there's not a lot of body parts that are fully functioning yet. The baby's eyes have already formed these non-image forming retinal cells. Babies see light starting early in the second trimester that's coming through the abdominal wall, the uterine wall, the infrared, far infrared spectrum. Babies see light. And this is a huge central mechanism in babies then developing all these healthy brain parts. They develop a circadian rhythm that's independent of the mom. They sleep maybe when the mom's awake. They're awake when the mom wants to be asleep. But also it gets to the hypothalamus, and it sets up a healthy HPA axis development in the developing fetus, which all this stuff, and it helps the baby develop their intestinal microbiome before they're even born, which is important. I just got a chance. I'm so happy, so lucky. I just got a chance to lecture about all of this in Paris about 2 months ago. This is profoundly impactful on fetal development and how they can set the system up for lifelong health. It is such a central mechanism. Babies do it before any other body part is like ready to go. But this is something we can use in children and adults to establish this stuff later if we need to, or reverse chronic disease simply by using light therapy that comes from the sun.
Wow, this is quite amazing. I didn't know the specifics of why this, or the scientific explanation of that it's far infrared, because as we know, or maybe we know in the audience here, that like more ancient spiritual civilizations, they would, or even today and throughout, and Native Americans too, they would face their dwellings east, right? So we can get the early rising sun and the benefits of the sun. Vastu, I think in the Vedas, or Maharishi Vastu, I was looking into this for a little bit. And one of the requirements for building their houses is the opening of the house must be facing east. It must be directly accessible from the east and have open access to morning daylight. And it has to be not blocked by a far feature, right? It can't be behind a hill. It has to have open daylight to the rising sun. And I've noticed here around the lockdowns, I was getting up strict early, maybe around 5 a.m. every morning, just straight. And I quit that. And I had the luxury to wake up with the sunrise. And so I found my body would just kind of naturally start waking up around the sunrise, and I still pretty much do that today. Now, if I could just get to bed around sunset a little bit, that might be helpful too. But pretty much most mornings are raised in the sun. And so the other thing, I don't know if you've heard about sun gazing. This practice of looking at the sun. Of course, we're told that it's quite dangerous to look at the sun, and I don't recommend this. Other than I've heard with your eyes closed, of course, and it's supposed to be safer when it's just on the horizon. Now, I didn't know this about the abdomen. Having it hit the abdomen, that's wild. And just recently this summer, I kind of intuitively we were my fiance and I were staying in the countryside, and I would just take off my shirt. I mean, it was hot enough anyway, and having the direct sunlight, hit my stomach for a while. I wanted to ask you about, for those that don't have access either to early morning sun or sunshine to, or want to accentuate this practice. Is there infrared lighting that makes sense? Because I know some people sell infrared lighting, and I haven't got into it. I haven't even really researched it. Do you have any feedback on this type of therapy?
Yeah, before I say that, possibly, at sunset, there's a lot of the red and far infrared light too, because like you see more reds at sunrise and at sunset than you do when the sun is above you. So if you can't get out in the morning, try to do it later in the day, possibly. Now the sun is the absolute best, but the infrared emitting lights, tabletop versions, they have fully immersion, infrared stuff. A lot of even workout centers will have that nowadays, and that is profoundly therapeutic. So it's kind of like gravy on top of everything if you do it with the sun stuff. But if you just don't have a chance to do the sun stuff, that's the next best thing. And unfortunately, the world we live in, making it so challenging to be healthy, part of it is like a lot of the time. I'm kind of pretty far up north here in the United States in the mountains. The sun's not even up typically by the time I get to work at 8, most days for like 4 or 5 months of the year. And so, I just don't have that option. I do step outside for at least 2 minutes between patients within the first 3 hours after sunrise and just close my eyes, to your point, close my eyes and let the sun hit my face. Now, a lot of our winters, I don't really want to expose my abdomen because it is cold, but let it hit your eyes even for 2 minutes. That's all you got to do. Stick your head out the window, out the door for 2 minutes. And that's a great way to do it, along with some of the red light therapy.
It's wild here in Denmark being so far north, and how kind of more daylight in the summer, less daylight in the winter, and people jumping in the ocean too, doing these type of practices. I'm not on board with that yet. But so we mentioned, epigenetics and some the therapies here. What else would you like to mention as far as either lifestyle practices? We mentioned meditation. Are there any kind of like general day-to-day things that might not be on people's radar, or that you could really recommend a lot? Even, I don't know, anything new on your radar too that you're studying or are looking into, anything else to fill in the gaps here that we haven't mentioned so far?
Yeah, and let me talk about. We talked about therapeutic light and how profoundly impactful that is. Let me talk just a minute about toxic blue light. And so, kind of in the system, such as the intestinal microbiome, you want a lot of the good, not a lot of the bad. As much of the good bacteria, these warriors fighting the battles for you, and the least amount of bad guys trying to take you down. So same thing with light. You want to get as much healthy light as you possibly can, but you want to minimize toxic light, and that's the blue lights. And so what we recommend is people wear high quality blue light blocking glasses when they're on screens and tablets and their phone as best they can during the day, but then consistently for 2 hours before bedtime. The blue lights that we get from our lighting in our homes is particularly toxic, as well as the screens and tablets 2 hours before bedtime. But even the lights will do it. Really toxic to the system. It really messes up the body's ability to make melatonin. And not only is that important for sleep-wake cycles, but it turns out melatonin is a profoundly central mechanism for every cell in our body. and just about every cell in our body actually makes melatonin. Even our eyes make melatonin. Um, and so what we've been telling people for years is people with higher melatonin levels, less heart attacks, less strokes, less cancer, less Alzheimer's, less osteoporosis. Here's melatonin, this hormone that's such a great example of how hormones do so much more than we give them credit for. And it turns out melatonin production is a super central mechanism. And that toxic blue light, particularly 2 hours before bedtime, totally messes up the body's ability to make the melatonin. And not only does that just disrupt the things I talked about, but it's totally messing up the circadian rhythm, the circadian biology in the body that's so profoundly important for our health. And so when it comes to the light, as much of the good as you can, as little of the bad as you can. And then the body loves, once again, good, bad, as much healthy light as possible, but also as much healthy darkness overnight. You want to have your bedroom as absolutely dark as possible. And the body likes both, but it needs both within a 24-hour cycle. And that has been shown to have some really incredible impact on the system as a whole. But this is one of the things that civilization has brought upon us is toxic blue light, lack of healthy light, as well as tons of emotional stress, physical stress, environmental toxicity, lead, mercury, arsenic, flame retardants, pesticides. It's just really challenging to stay healthy in our world, and all the medications that tend to mess up the system. But we have this amazing ability to heal. And just like the Harvard study on meditation, we start doing this light stuff. It doesn't take 20 years to notice the difference. People so quickly notice a difference, including I have a lot of elderly patients that can't drive because their night vision is so terrible. Within a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, their night vision is profoundly better, and they can start driving at night all over because those non-image forming retinal cells that a baby has the early second trimester, that's what drives the development of the rest of the eye, the rods and cones that see images. And so this light therapy, this healthy light, is actually helping the eyes heal, among all the other body parts as well.
It really is important. I mean, I've got a light coming over here. We haven't got a chance to change out the fluorescent lights in here. With meditation that I do, I just call it energetically sensitive. Like if I go into a place with a lot of fluorescent lighting, my eyes will start burning. They'll just start hurting a lot more. So I've got there's an app. At least Apple computers and some other have started putting this night mode on. Not night mode. I'm sorry. What is it called? It does block some of the blue light. I have got a free app here that does it by daylight. Depending on where you go, wherever you're at in the world, and whenever the sunrise and sunset, it'll automatically adjust the blue light. It gets rid of most of the toxic blue light. And then as you're starting closer to bedtime, it will get even less and less, almost like orange. It changes the color spectrum even more to adjust to when one is going to bed. And totally agree. I power down. Not everybody can do this, but I power down all my electronics at night usually, and get them outside of my bedroom as well. The temptation's not there to grab it. And and of course, some people need to have their phone on, throughout the night and whatever. But I think it's for those of us who can power down a lot of the electronics and get off of them before bedtime is really helpful. Do you know anything about like this daylight spectrum lighting or just regular light? Because I've got rid of a lot of the LED lights actually. They are power efficient, but the light spectrum I don't find conducive. I actually went back to incandescent in some cases. What do you recommend for everyday lighting around the house? Do you have any recommendations for that one?
Yeah, the incandescent lighting doesn't have nearly the blue light spectrum, the toxic spectrum, as the LED and the fluorescence. So that's definitely preferable.
Now, you did mention medications too, and being an MD, I didn't want to probe too much into this, but What can you say? I don't want to get any political thing here or whatever, but what can you say about traditional kind of allopathy medicine and pharmaceuticals? I know in a lot of instances, yes, they do people really good, but then I hear other instances where they just can wreck people's health, right? And one side effect can lead to another medication and another side effect. And a lot of the studies I hear aren't really done, they're just done on one medication, right? But people are on multiple medications, and a lot of times, and if I'm getting this right, they're not really studied with all the different medications at once on certain things. So, is there anything to say about this in general here?
Yeah. So if somebody's on two prescription medicines, they have a 20% chance of an adverse drug-drug interaction, creating new health issues. If you're on three meds, you got a 40% chance, four meds, an 80% chance. Once you get on five prescription medicines, you are guaranteed to be having an adverse drug-drug interaction, creating new problems because of the interaction of those meds. And so the more you're on, the more it's going to create new problems. You get put on a medicine for the side effect of another medicine. And so it's just kind of gets to be a mess. Now, what I say about prescription medicines is you got to do what you got to do to get through your day. You know, if you're in such pain, you can't get through your day, you got to do something. If your brain is so darn foggy, you're so depressed, you're so anxious, you're so whatever that you can't even get off the couch to take care of the kids, to do your job, whatever, you got to do what you got to do to get through your day. But when that happens, what that should do is buy us time for us to go back now, figure out why you have what you have. Let's address why you got what you got. Now you start feeling better, much better than just being on the medication, because the medication is really going to just kind of take care of a couple symptoms, you know, the ones that are the most problematic for you, but they're not going to do anything for everything else you're experiencing. And then they create new issues as time goes on. But let's use it to buy time to go back and figure out why you got what you got. Let's address it. Now you feel profoundly better. And when you get health issues, everything is connected. It doesn't matter where in your body, what you got going on, you know it's connected with everything else. That's just how the body works. That's not how more traditional allopathic medicine looks at it. Well, you're a heart to this doctor, you're a lung to this doctor, you're a gut to this doctor, you're a skin to this doctor, you're an eye to this doctor, and they never meet. They don't talk crosstalk. Well, of course they crosstalk, right? Everything is super connected. So when you do these central mechanisms we're talking about, you're in a position to fix everything at the exact same time. You feel profoundly better. Well, now you're in a position to start coming down and off of those medications, you know, avoiding the individual side effects, avoiding the adverse drug-drug interactions. And then most of the time, people can come off pretty much all the meds eventually. Or in our case, when people are so far towards the disease process kind of stuff, where they have tons of meds, tons of life-threatening stuff going on, we may not be able to get rid of all the meds. Usually we can get rid of 80, 90%, I swear. But it's important then to say, okay, well, if you can't get off this med because we just haven't been able to get you off it, we know the downsides of this med. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you get all the upside, the benefit of this med, and do not get the downside. So then we protect people from the downside of the meds they maybe just can't get off of because they've been dealing with something so profoundly for so long. That's okay. But we just make sure then that they don't have the downside. They only get the upside. But truly, we can get people off just about any medication once the body is healed and taken over. One kind of example I use is, let's say somebody has a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, and it's just paralyzing them, right? They can't get, you know, they can't do what they need to do. Well, here's Xanax. It's going to create calm. And people go, geez, I feel a lot better, let's say. Now, you can just leave it at that. But what I would look at that is, well, given all the reasons potentially that you became a very anxious person, the one thing you know is not creating this anxiety is a Xanax deficiency. The reason is you do not have Xanax in your body. It can't be a Xanax deficiency. It is something, but it's not a Xanax deficiency. Well, a lot of times people go, so what's the big deal? I'm more chill, so I don't have to worry about it. You know, you missed an opportunity to go back once the Xanax kind of helped you get through your day and figure out why you got the anxiety, fix the why. Now you're totally chill, feeling a lot better than even when you were just using the Xanax. But now we fixed everything else in the system at the same time. Now you don't even need the Xanax. Now you don't need the downsides of the Xanax. And you truly have done your due diligence to address why, the root cause of whatever health issue you have. And then we lock you in place, and that's how you stay good long term. You just don't keep getting stuff as time goes on. We prevent the things you don't want, even though maybe everybody in your community is getting it. You're not the one getting it.
It's a really wise, level-headed, rational, and kind approach there. I really couldn't have agreed more at the systematic way of dealing with this. The one thing that did come up really is, what about somebody that just doesn't have the motivation? They know what they need to do, but they're just not doing it right. Do you still encounter people? Maybe they're just not drawn to you, but I hear this sometimes. It just, people don't kind of have either the inspiration, the drive to want to do it, to be reliant on other people all the time, maybe, or just want the quick fix. I mean, I'm sure there's other underlying things, or maybe people might have addictive tendencies or things like this. What can be said fairly briefly
Yeah.
about things like
So,
that? Yeah.
so I see lots of people that, we say, okay, your energy level, 1 to 10, 10's the best. One, what number would you give it? Your memory concentration, 1 to 10, 10's the best. What would you give it? A lot of people say, I have no motivation. I just don't have any drive to do. Okay, give me your motivation. 1 to 10, 10 is you're the most motivated person in the world. 0 is nothing. That's just part of the disease process. Lack of motivation, lack of energy, lack of brain clarity, lack of muscle strength, whatever it is. That's just part of the disease process. And as you get things going the right way, motivation gets better, energy gets better, brain gets better, all this kind of stuff. But that can be a bit of a hurdle, because if you can't quite even motivate yourself to do some of this stuff, how can you start breaking this vicious cycle? Well, there's a lot of people out there, and kind of our society in general, people are kind of taught, well, here's a pill for every ill. Okay. And a lot of people think along those lines. Now, shifting, of course, thanks to people like yourself, Josh, but really getting the word out about, other things that can be done. But, fortunately, there is a pill for why people get this stuff. It doesn't tend to be the prescription medicines that put bandages on stuff. And so somebody's good bacteria has been decimated. They can't make this butyrate that works through epigenetics, prevents cancer 5 different ways. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll give it to you in a pill form. Okay. Now, eventually you'll make it on your own, because we're going to fix what's going on, but we can give you as a pill form. So just take this pill. Or there's something the liver makes called TUDCA, TUDCA, kills cancer cells, which is kind of cool. It works through epigenetics. But this TUDCA made by the liver is profoundly important for all these civilizations that we touched on. And so if you take away our water in a human being, we're left with some vitamins, some minerals, some fatty acids, but mainly we're protein. We're about 80% protein. Hormones are proteins. Cell walls are proteins. Bone is 80% protein. Hair, nails, you name it, it's all protein. So there's a specific spot in the cells where new healthy proteins are made called the endoplasmic reticulum. The world around us, though, being as toxic as it is, as difficult to stay healthy, it creates inflammation right there within the endoplasmic reticulum, creating what they call endoplasmic reticulum stress. And that produces the misfolded protein response. Proteins become misfolded during the production process. And when they're misfolded, they're not that protein, they're just a glob of amino acids. And then it mucks up, creates more inflammation within the endoplasmic reticulum and more misfolding. Classic example is type 1 diabetes, where the pancreas will not make insulin to control blood sugar, and you need insulin pumps, insulin injections, because you're not making it on your own. Now, talking about epidemic, this used to be called childhood onset diabetes, where adults would get insulin resistance, where they would have tons of insulin production by the pancreas, but the receptors on the cells for insulin are resistant to insulin, so insulin can't attach and do its work, almost like you don't have insulin. You get blood sugar control issues, diabetes. Well, this epidemic of civilization diseases, they actually have to change the name, because they can't call it childhood onset diabetes anymore, because adults get it. They need the insulin pumps. And rather than the powers that be go, holy crud, adults are getting childhood onset diabetes. What the heck's going on? We need to do something different. Well, the only thing they did different is change the name to type 1 diabetes. And then they don't do anything else. But this misfolded protein response within the pancreas misfolds insulin, and it's not insulin anymore. You can't control blood sugar. You need insulin shots. Well, this TUDCA made by the liver is the central mechanism in how you can prevent and reverse all these diseases, these civilization diseases I went through earlier. because TUDCA made by the liver is what they call a chaperone molecule. It chaperones the proteins through production process so they do not become misfolded. Now you're making healthy proteins, healthy hormones, you name it, with the help of a capsule. Let's give that person the capsule. Their blood sugar's better, they lose weight, their blood pressure goes down, their kidney function gets better, their brain neuroinflammation corrects, all this different kind of stuff. But the liver makes TUDCA for itself, including you can use this TUDCA to totally heal a liver dying of fatty liver cirrhosis. Oh my gosh, is it powerful? Well, eventually, though, the liver gets all healthy again. Now it makes its own TUDCA. Now you stay healthy all by yourself. But during this process, your motivation has gotten great. You're feeling so much better. And you're like, wow, I feel so much better. I'm motivated to stay this way my whole life. Well, you had to take some capsules to get there. But now that you feel great, the body's taken over, the body's doing all the work itself. You don't need these capsules, these supplements, these bioidentical supplements, because you're doing it on your own. The body's so smart.
It's kind of like a teacher lighting a fire under your rear sometimes, or a mentor, it's kind of like that jump start. It amazes me how this stuff can get out of whack, but there's so many different environmental stressors and habits and what we've been talking about before. Amazes me how they just started really seriously studying the gut biome like 10, 20 years ago. I mean, well, compared to, I don't know, probably even longer, but it's wild how much they're discovering about this. I don't hear so much about doing fecal transplants. I think they were talking about for a long time too, which I don't know. I mean, there's just so many topics to get into, but it's pretty well established now how important the microbiome is, and the stuff on fascia. So this has been a fascinating conversation. If there's anything else you want to wrap up with that, I also want to let you have a chance here to talk about your website, anything you got going on, courses, how people can work with you, what kind of availability you have, books, anything else that you do that you want to draw people's attention to. And then take us out on a final word here, message you'd like to leave the audience with.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, people can reach me through DR, it's short for doctor in English, so drdavidbilstrom.com. And on my website, we have two different levels of educational courses for non-medical people, two different levels of courses for medical people. We really want to teach people where this stuff comes from and how they can actually reverse the process or prevent disease all by themselves. I have over 150 different YouTube videos. I think it is vitally important that people understand that this is not one person's opinion. This is the science. And so every video you're going to find me, well, I'm going to be out in nature. I'm going to be on top of some mountain. I'm going to be someplace like that because we really do use nature, such as sunlight and other kind of things to heal. But I'm going to be talking about something. I'm going to hold up an article and say, hey, look what the Journal of Bump 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 said in 2022 about this subject. And so everything, this is just a science. And fortunately, this huge explosion in medical knowledge the last 20, 30 years tells us so much about why people get health issues, how to prevent them, but how to reverse the process, including, helping people before they even conceive a child, helping a woman during pregnancy, so we can set the system even before the person's conceived, set the system before they're even born to kind of put them in a good place so they can stay healthy their whole life and then pass on better epigenetics to the next 6 to 8 generations. That's how it works. And there's nothing that can't be reversed, basically. And really, the body's just super smart. A lot more information about this photobiomodulation and circadian biology, all the stuff we're talking about. There's gobs more for reading. I'll do a ton of blog posts because I really feel like knowledge is power. And if people know this kind of stuff, they are so empowered. They can do this themselves. Of course, I'm always there to help them if they can. But truly, the body is so amazing. You can have something for 80 years. It doesn't matter. And truly, that's what I like to maybe end with, is it does not matter what you have or how long you've had it. Your body the entire time is sitting there saying, hey, I know how to fix this. I am trying to fix this, but something has gotten in the way. And I'm kind of stuck here, but I'm waiting for my opportunity. So what we're talking about today, Josh, is basically what just gets these things out of the way. And the body says, all right, I have finally had my opportunity. I can now fix this. And off it goes and does a beautiful job. Even if you've had something for 80 years, you can actually make it go away. The body is phenomenal.
Well, brilliant, Dr. David. Bilstrom, thanks so much again for joining. Learned quite a bit here. Appreciate the enthusiasm you bring to this too. And of course, the knowledge and the science. It's always important for those who want the science backed up that it's there. It's actually backed up and can be verified on that level too. Really inspiring. It warms my heart to know that this approach of medicine is becoming more, I think, I feel holistic. I know the word's overused. But yes, thanks again for joining. And so may all beings everywhere come to know the power of their body and mind and the natural health that's awaiting you if it's not already there. Be well, everyone.